What you're about to see are lessons bought at a high and awful price. They are meant to keep you alive, safe, and should you ever need them, they are the lessons meant to guide you and your loved ones through the worst day of your life. My name is Christopher Allan Smith. Until November 8th, 2018, this was my home in Paradise, California. It's where my wife and I raised our two boys, and it was from here we fled as the Campfire tore into our town. The disaster displaced over 52,000 people from Concal, Magnolia, Paradise, Yankee Hill, and other parts of the Paradise Ridge. And it killed 85 of our friends and neighbors. These lessons saved us. Many were learned from previous disasters and passed on by first responders, government officials, and ordinary citizens wanting to help. Some are new, because now it's our turn to pass on what we learned. While our disaster was fire, these are meant to help you and yours survive disasters of all kinds. They're for everyone: civilians and first responders, risk managers in the private sector, and disaster planners at every level of government, from town councils to national capitals. It's all here for everyone, because the first step in preparing is to know as much as you can.
You know, we knew as fire service professionals that Paradise was susceptible to fire. I mean, Paradise is a geographic plateau, sits in the foothills of Northern California in a Mediterranean climate. It's got a timbered forest, overstory forest. It's surrounded by the very deep and steep canyon in the West Butte Creek Canyon, and also to the east by the west branch of the North Fork of another very, very steep and narrow canyon, actually.
It's the epitome of an urban interfaced area, and it's always been talked about of the potential of something catastrophic happening to that entire general area.
Here is the first lesson. Do not live in fear, but accept there is a real chance a disaster will happen to you. Right now, you may be thinking, it can happen to you, but you don't really feel it. Nothing this big ever happens to you. But take it from me, it happens. This is a list of common disasters, based on one maintained by the Red Cross. Now, maybe there's never been a tornado where you live, but what about a chemical train derailment, an earthquake, a mass shooting? Chances for any one of these is small. But the more things happen, you will encounter at least something on this list. Now is not the time to panic. Now is the time to prepare. Hurricanes are named after people. Earthquakes tend to be named after years. Fires are named after places. This is Camp Creek Road. It's the closest geological feature to where the campfire started. But this is not the campfire you're thinking of.
Fire is driven by three predominant fire behavior factors: topography, fuels, and weather. When I talk about fuels, we predominantly talk about forest fuels: grass, brush, and timber. But fuel is anything that burns. It could be a vehicle, it could be a structure. We as CAL FIRE have used varying scenarios in many of our classes, including our operations section chief class. In Paradise fire scenario, where a fire would burn from one of those drainages up into town, was certainly one of the scenarios.
The biggest fire in the history of Butte County started here, and it was called the Campfire. But you've probably never heard of it. That's because it started in 2008 and was one of many fires which burned through the county that summer. So many, in fact, the collection was given a new name, the Lightning Complex.
So back in 2008, I was the district's representative in the EOC. And so I spent several days in the EOC working with town officials, fire officials.
Marcus is talking about something every level of government should have. It's called an Emergency Operations Center, or EOC. This is Butte County's EOC. It allows disaster responders to concentrate information, efforts, and communication when the chaos of a disaster strikes. It makes responses immensely more efficient. In Butte County, it works like this. When a disaster strikes, the county opens the EOC, The Butte County Sheriff opens their Incident Command Center, and CAL FIRE opens their Incident Command Center. Firefighters put out the fire, law enforcement evacuates areas in danger, and the county opens shelters and gets resources from within the county, from other counties, from the state, or the federal government, depending on the scale of the disaster.
People ask me, what's it like? I say it's kind of like being in a war room, plotting evacuations, obtaining current information, trying to make projections about direction of fire impacts.
Over the course of 5 weeks, the Lightning Complex fire burned 88,000 acres. Earlier that summer, another fire, the Humboldt Fire, burned 24,000 acres, destroyed 74 structures, and prompted the evacuation of most of Paradise. That evacuation resulted in people stuck on narrow, wooded roads for as much as 12 hours. While no one was killed, the 2008 Summer of Fire struck many observers as a bullet very narrowly dodged. In the years that followed, first responders, local and state officials, and civilians from every corner of the county came together to create plans and make changes so the next time the Paradise Ridge faced a fire, things would go better.
We learned a lot in 2008.
Many of our foothill communities have very limited ingress and egress. For instance, Paradise has, as we know, 4 routes out to the west and south from town, and 1 route to the north that at the time did not go all the way through. And then other communities have only 1 way in and 1 way out. And we always know that those communities are vulnerable. The population density in Paradise, obviously 26,500 people at the time of the fire roughly, and in Magalia another 11 to 13,000 people. When you put that many people on very limited roadways, traffic is going to back up and it's going to get jammed. I think one of the biggest things that we learned is the understanding and the need to maximize our ability to use what limited traffic lanes that we have out of a community to maximize the flow.
That's where they ended up developing zones.
Maybe the best program disaster planners made famous after the 2008 fires were the evacuation zones. The town, county, CAL FIRE, and the sheriff revamped and widely publicized evacuation zones for Paradise, Magalia, and Concow.
There's 14 in the town of Paradise, and the zones in Paradise are numbered, and the zones in Magalia and elsewhere in the county are geographically labeled.
Evacuation zones work like this. Citizens sign up for a notification system and learn their zone. Mine was 11. When the disaster hits, automatic calls go out informing citizens if their zone got an evacuation warning, making them aware of the danger, giving them the chance to pack up and get ready to go, or an evacuation order. That way, people truly at threat would get on the road and get out, while those safe from danger could stay at home or work and keep the streets free.
I think probably one of the most significant things that was done was the paving of the roadway from Inskip over to Butte Meadows, up Skyway and Inskip over to Butte Meadows. The primary impetus being that it would be an alternate route to evacuate people.
Another improvement was a major upgrade to the emergency mass notification system, the system the county and town used to let residents know of danger. Exercising good communication and getting quality information is something so key to dealing with catastrophe. We've dedicated an entire upcoming video just to this subject.
It was a dial-up system, and we quickly moved to a web-based system where more calls could be made.
There was a significant emphasis on training, preparation, making sure we had adequate plans and facilities for how we were going to address any sort of disaster, whether it be flooding or a fire or an earthquake, anything like that.
The community evacuation plans, they've been updated a couple of times since then. The town especially has done a lot of work on one-way evacuations, contraflow, turning a 2-lane going in opposite directions into one-way, both lanes going the same direction to get people out. We have a registry in Butte County, the Special Needs Awareness Program, SNAP, and that registry took a dramatic change after the 2008 fires. And the Disaster Preparedness Committee met with local law and fire folks and said, what do you need to know? And the answer was, we need people who need extra help evacuating, folks that are wheelchair users, or maybe bedbound, or particularly frail. People can go online and either register online or there's a phone number they can call. It's not a guarantee of being evacuated, but it does help give people some planning measures.
We changed the town of Paradise and Upper Ridge evacuation plan to follow the national Ready, Set, Go format. Ready being things to do to be ready before the fire season hits. Defensible space, a home evacuation plan, getting your go bag together, all of those things that one should do in the spring before the summer sets in. The next part was the get set. Get set is just that. It's sort of like being on deck in the batter's box. Hey, there's a fire that's near me. It's not necessarily impacting me now, but I gotta get my last minute things together. I gotta get the go bag, I gotta grab my medicines. I've got to make sure that I have my pets and their resources and their go bag and those kinds of things, and collect those and get them ready. And then of course the go is just that. That's when you receive official notification or it becomes obvious, and I think that's the thing that people need to realize. First responders working with law enforcement will do everything we can to notify people, but sometimes there are going to be events that develop so rapidly there isn't time, or systems go down, infrastructure goes down, and we're not able to notify everybody, and that's in essence a no-notice event.
A no-notice event. That's a polite phrase for what separates an emergency from a disaster. Emergencies can be handled. Disasters cannot, at least for a while. A no-notice event did come to Butte County. 18 months before the fire, a tear opened in the spillway of the Oroville Dam after especially heavy rains. Concerned with the reservoir's water levels as the rains continued, officials decided to let water over the emergency dirt spillway, and it began to erode.
We were looking at the potential of a 30-foot high wall of water, about 1,300 feet long, cascading down the side of the mountain, taking with it everything in its path. And when I asked them to explain to me again how fast it was moving, they said 30 feet an hour. And I said, well, how close is it? And they said, we think it's about 30 feet away.
Oroville was evacuated, and over 100,000 people were in danger, from Butte County all the way to Sacramento.
I believe that our experiences with the Oroville Dam spillway evacuation informed and guided our response to the Campfire evacuation.
The plans worked. Tens of thousands had been evacuated without the loss of a single life. This lesson is a complement to our last one. Respect reality. When an emergency strikes, amid the initial danger, there is often a part of our mind that rebels, that doesn't want to accept what fate is presenting. You may feel denial, may be tempted to minimize what's happening, find it hard to take evacuation orders seriously, or think that you alone can outsmart or outrun Mother Nature. My advice? Don't. Just 5 days after the campfire began, and while it still raged, Butte County Sheriff Corey Honey reported this.
There are other people that have stayed in the area, and I appreciate that. I understand the desire to stay and protect your home, and if they were able to make it out alive, great. I will tell you that there are people who did that did not make it out alive.
Denying hard truths is a human error we all share, but in a disaster, it can be deadly. Another very human response to overwhelming and unprecedented events is confusion. It happens to the best of us.
I remember distinctly the day of the fire, this fog of war, for lack of a better way to describe it, and this constant struggle to gain an understanding of what was happening, to gain situational awareness. It was very disorienting. This started in the morning, but by the time I got to Paradise and as the day waned on, it got darker and darker because the smoke and ash were blocking out the sun. And so despite the fact that it was early in the day, there was this sense that it was nighttime. The other phenomenon that I think added to the confusion was I knew where the fire was coming from, and I could certainly see the glow, and there was ash and embers raining down. But then I would see fires on the other side of me, and the thought would, be, why is the fire over there? I don't understand. It's supposed to be coming from there. Now, of course, later on, I came to realize that the embers that were being blown were setting spot fires all around. And many of those spot fires, there was no one there to report them because everyone was trying to get out. And so you had fire all around you, but no official confirmation of where that was at, which made it very, very difficult to understand.
There's a factor in most of these lessons that might not seem obvious at first, but it's laced through most of the best practices like a nervous system. Humility. You will encounter confusion, doubt, stress, and possibly danger. It's not hyperbole to consider the fact that your life could be in actual peril. Because of that, take the wisdom of those who have faced these dangers and challenges on a daily basis. Be humble to what they have to tell you. One lesson I gleaned from firefighters in the decade of public service education they did before the Campfire was this. If you're looking at your situation, at the events around you, and ask yourself if it's a good idea to evacuate, the chances are very good that you already should have evacuated. Err on the side of getting out early. The worst case is everything will be fine and you'll just have taken a little day trip. The best case is you will have avoided true danger. I am 100% convinced it was this lesson that saved my life. But that is a story for our next episode. It suffices here to say, I learned this lesson before the Campfire and it proved true. Unfortunately, a lot of what we knew before the fire ended up falling short.
I would say if you spoke to me on November 7th, I would have said, you know what, we have a good plan in place. We planned for different events. I felt that we have a good response plan. It's all scripted. Unfortunately, that all went out the window on November 8th.
Which brings us to this. As a citizen, you've thought about your family's needs, medical concerns, pets, and what you should pack. You know your evacuation zone. As a disaster agency, you've gotten your EOC ready, made plans, backup plans, and alternates. You've trained your employees and bought the gear first responders will need. But somewhere in your disaster plan should be this sentence. There is a very real chance you will need to ignore your disaster plan. Take it from me, that's not as scary as it sounds.